All right. Next panel, disruptive participation and radical listening. I want to introduce to you all Gemma-Rose Turnbull. She is an Australian artist, writer, and senior lecturer in photography at Coventry University. Gemma's research interests lie with the ways in which photographers integrate innovative co-productive methodologies into their practice, particularly when authorship structures are revised so people who may have previously been subjects of documentary text become co-creators. Gemma writes about her research and the intersection of photography and socially engaged art practices online at Photography as a Social Practice. It's a blog, really great blog. So welcome to Gemma. If we could have Sol Aramendi, Zohar Kafir, and Nina Robinson join us up on stage.
I'm going to set the stage a little bit for this panel, and you'll have to forgive me. I'm in the final stretches of my PhD at the moment, so it's really hard to change gears and write something that is conversational, not just academic. So please bear with me. Do we have my slides in there? No? I guess my slides aren't, actually, you know what, my slides aren't super important. So can you hold the clicker for me? I'll keep the paper, thanks. So I am a senior lecturer in photography at Coventry University in England. I'm Australian, and I got to England via here. I'm currently running a master's in photography and collaboration, which we're launching January next year with my colleague Anthony Silveira. Like Noelle just said, I run the website Photography as a Social Practice with my colleagues Eliza Gregory and Mark Sternquist. So before I begin, can you hold that piece of paper for me? Thank you. Too many pieces of paper. It really is hard to give up academic writing. But before I begin, and in the spirit of acknowledging authorship, I just want to say that I have referenced but not named these authors in this introduction. That includes Daniel Palmer, whose new book, A Collaborative Turn in Contemporary Photography, is really, really good read. Jeffrey Batchen, Ariella Azoulay, of course, Ruth Rosengarten, Dave Beach, Liz Wells, Stephen Wright, and Sharita Town. So everyone else I have referenced by name. Okay, sorry, papers, the worst. So collaboration and participation, like Susan and Wendy talked us through this morning, are not new concepts nor methodologies in documentary, within the history of documentary-based photography. So by the nature of the author-subject relationship, in many ways, documentary photography can be read as an endeavour which requires participation. However, using approaches which explicitly relocate the subject of the photographic gaze to an active maker in the production of photographic works has become increasingly popular. So my PhD examines innovative authorship in documentary practices. The relocation, which forefronts the relational component of storytelling, introduces new ways of making, but also requires new frameworks to understand how to create meaningful practice. One of the driving impulses, which seems to propel the rising popularity of collaborative ways of photographic making, is unsettling the habitual relations of power between the agent of photography and its object, disrupting ideas of representing and represented. And these methodologies are often utilised in working with those individuals and communities who might traditionally be the subjects of photographic works. I'm really enjoying our collaboration right now. Most commonly associated with documentary practice, with its strong ties to social justice and social realism. That's better. In my own collaborative practices, for example, I've worked with street-based sex workers, elderly people who've experienced abuse, and children from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds. And if we visualise the continuum of a project running roughly from conception through financing, establishment of critical creative parameters, production, curation, exhibition through to archiving, it's possible to imagine a constellation of possibilities for the radicalisation of authorship within these sites, which is really exciting for a practice which is founded on the idea of the photographer as a special seer. But even with a project continuum which may emulate that of traditional making, a challenge with this kind of practice is a tendency for photographer authors, and this is really hard to say in this room today because you've seen so many examples of great practice, to fail to take into account the implications of embracing alternative forms of authorship within the structures of photography. So this may lead to the terms being enacted in a performative way, where collaboration is implemented in ways that do not robustly defend the agency of their collaborators, or acknowledge the insider knowledge they bring to the formation of the work. This is not necessarily deliberately disingenuous, but may be reflective of a lack of understanding of the broader implications inherent in a practice that is labelled such. While socially engaged practices are at the forefront of contemporary art dialogue, there are very few photography-specific guides to support the translation of this impulse to transform authorship into action which reflects the intentionality of practice. And of course, there is a natural tension which occurs when this practice becomes the preserve of multiplicity. The construct of photography heroizes the single auteur, and it is both conceptually and pragmatically confronting to reposition ownership. So one of the things my colleagues and I have been working on over the last few years is identifying some of the ways in which these kinds of practices may be understood better and expanded by those people utilising them. We've consistently looked towards the contemporary discourse and developments of socially engaged art, keeping our focus on the specific concerns of photography. This has included attempts to define the ways in which collaborative photographic practices can be diverse rather than singularly enacted within the making stage, illustrated here with the illustration that was here. If you look at our website, Photography as a Social Practice, we have a broadsheet which you can download. And Eliza Gregory has a great spectrum of collaboration in there, which is a starting point to think about the ways in which practice might be diversified. We've also asked lots of key questions of the practice, and there was a list of questions which you could possibly see here. And one of the most important questions that we've identified is to think about who needs photography and who needs photographers and how they are needed. Our research has revealed it is crucial for people who make work in this realm to examine their motivations. Sharita Town, who's a friend and colleague, frames it really beautifully. How do you take pictures of somebody in a way that brings them to the table instead of putting them on the menu? It is clear that the answer is both asking in the first instance, as well as listening intently, even when that listening may reveal outcomes that force the project into forms as yet unrecognisable within the documentary genre. Almost there. The panel today is structured around the idea that listening is an active act, which might set conditions for meaningful, even radical collaboration. So today we're going to hear from 3 practitioners who move beyond listening for storytelling purposes and towards listening as a project component which discerns outcome and form. We have Sol Aramendi, Nina Robinson, and Zohar Kafir. After these guys have presented their projects, we'll have a discussion about the role of listening and in diverse collaborations. The very first, my collaborator in paper, Sol Aramendi, who's a New York-based Argentinian artist working in new media, photography and video. Today she is going to share Project Luz, an app that links the struggle for immigrant workers' rights to the concept of community accountability. Thank you.